Now, can we please welcome to the Babab on stage, speaking for the first time into Leonards, Linsay McCulloch.
Thanks very much, Tim. Yes, so tonight I'm going to talk to you about a film I absolutely love called I Know Where I'm Going. Quick show of hands in the dark, how many people have seen this film? Okay. That's generally what I get, is like a handful of people who have seen it. So I hope to persuade you tonight that you need to rush home, find it on YouTube and watch it immediately. It's written, produced and directed by these guys, who are Michael Powell and Emmerich Pressburger. And they worked together often from the late 30s to the early 60s, often under their film production company, which is called The Archers. So if you ever see this target at the start of a film, you know you are in for an absolute treat. So as I say, they worked together for over 20 years, but they had an absolute magisterial period really from 1942, actually that's wrong, it should be 1942 to 1948, when they made Colonel Blimp, A Canterbury Tale, Matter of Life and Death, Black Narcissus, and The Red Shoes. I mean, that's quite a run. And in between A Canterbury Tale and A Matter of Life and Death, they made the one that we're going to be looking at tonight, which is called I Know Where I'm Going, which is a romance. Just to give their films really a bit of context, so when they were making films during the war, just after the war, the other kind of films that were around were very different to the kind of things that they were doing. So obviously there was a lot of films about patriotism, about sacrifice. There were films about the home front and the work that the women were doing on the home front during the war. There were films that really stressed that kind of collective effort, we're all in it together, and Millions Like Us is one of those. And what all these films had in common was that they were kind of rooted in reality. They were very much about the kind of day-to-day life that people were leading, whether they were serving or whether they were at home. But Powell and Pressburger did things slightly differently. So in Black Narcissus, we've got sexually repressed nuns in a Himalayan convent. In A Matter of Life and Death, we've got an escalator to heaven. In A Canterbury Tale, we've got a film which starts off in the 14th century with Chaucerian pilgrims on their way to Canterbury, but the bulk of the film is set in 1942 in wartime Kent. And I've chosen this short because they were kind of film pioneers as well. And so if you've seen Stanley Kubrick's 2001 A Space Odyssey, 1967, there's a scene in that where some prehistoric ape dude invents violence and weapons, and he is using a stick to beat other ape dudes up. He throws the stick up into the air, there's a jump cut, very famous jump cut, and then what happens is it becomes a satellite orbiting the Earth thousands of years later. Powell and Pressburger did this shot 25 years before Kubrick, and so in this one what they have is a 14th century pilgrim who's a falconer. He throws his falcon up in the air, jump cut, and it becomes a Spitfire flying over wartime Kent. This is a really impressive shot. So, they're clever guys, and the film that we're going to see tonight is no different really. So, Martin Scorsese thinks it's a masterpiece. Who are we to disagree? I certainly have no disagreement with that. But just to tell you a little bit about the plot, so it concerns Joan Webster, this woman who's a very kind of practical young woman, really got her head screwed on, and she is engaged to the very wealthy, but old enough to be her father, Sir Robert Bellinger. She's travelling from her home in Manchester to an island in the Hebrides called Killoran. It's a fictional island. It's real in the film, obviously, but it's fictional in real life. And so she's travelling to meet her fiancé. On her journey there, she gets stranded in Mull, which is the next island along from Killoran. She gets stranded there by bad weather. And while she's there, she meets the very young, the very handsome, but very poor Torquil McNeill. Joan is desperate to get to Killoran, to get the kind of easy life that she wants and that she's always wanted, but she knows the longer that she's stuck on Mull, the more her plans are going to be in danger. I should mention at this point as well that Torquil is the real laird of Killoran, and he's rented out the island for the duration to her fiancé. I'm going to start us off with a clip, one of the first of 3 clips I've got for you tonight, and this opens the film, so it really gives you a good idea of the kind of person that Joan is.
When Joan was only 1 year old, she already knew where she was going. Going right, left, no, straight on. When she was 5, she was writing, "Dear Father Christmas, I don't want a doll, and I don't want a big red ball. What I want is a pair of silk stockings, and I mean silk, not artificial." She was 12 before she got her first pair of silk stockings, and they were artificial. See, all the other girls are waiting to catch the bus. And waiting. Look at her, here she comes, straight for the milk van. Is she going to get a lift? She is. At 18, she's a working girl and she still knows what she wants. A boy wants to take her to the movies, twice a week, if she'll let him. She would rather have a dinner at the best hotel in town, even if he can only take her once a month. There she is, that tall, skinny girl. Will he take her? He will. She's 25 now, and in one thing she's never changed. She still knows where she's going.
Good evening, Miss Webster.
Good evening, Leon.
So that's Joan. In some ways, perhaps not a very likeable person, but in this film she is incredibly lovable, actually. But you might think, well, that sounds so far so Mills and Boon. Why do I like this film so much? Number of reasons. First of all, it looks absolutely beautiful. So these aren't publicity stills, by the way. These are stills from the film. These are in the actual film. So you can stop this film anywhere, and it looks like a painting. They're just masters of how you use light. And their cinematographer, Erwin Hillier, was a master of black and white filmmaking as well. But it's not just about looking good. They use these shots kind of for very specific reasons. So this is Joan at the threshold of Moy Castle, which features in the film's plot. And this is Torquil in the same threshold an hour later. And so these shots are exactly the same, and that's to kind of show the connection between them. But I think we should find out a little bit more about Joan. One of the other reasons I love this film is her absolute cynicism. So there's no question, really, that she's marrying for money. She doesn't really try to hide it. And her dreams about her marriage, well, we'll see the less about the person of Sir Robert Bellinger and more about the kind of life that she can lead with him. Let's have another clip. This clip, I should say actually before we start, is she's on her journey from Manchester to Glasgow. She's on the sleeper train, and while she's asleep, this is the dream that she has.
You can't marry Consolidated Chemical Industries.
Can't I?
She'd have said she works for Consolidated Chemical Industries.
Do you, John Webster, take Consolidated Chemical Industries to be your lawful wedded husband?
I do.
And do you, Consolidated Chemical Industries, take John Webster to be your lawful wedded wife?
Good evening, Lady Bellinger.
Everything's arranged. Everything's arranged. Everything's arranged. Everything's arranged. Charge to your account, madam. Of course.
Perfect, it's perfect, it's perfect.
Fine. We'll send it, madam. We'll send it, madam.
500 guineas, 500 guineas.
Thank you, madam. Thank you, madam.
Lady Bellinger's car. You take the high road and I'll take the low road, and I'll be in Scotland before we. Next station, Gretna Green. You're over the border now. Glasgow Central!
Oh! Yes?
So that's Joan. She's determined to get those silk stockings that she's been wanting all her life, and she thinks that marrying Sir Robert will bring that to her. Sir Robert is the chairman of Consolidated Chemical Industries, so he's her boss at work, although we never found out in the film what her job is. But you'll have seen from that clip that actually her wedding dress is this big symbol to her of how that new life is going to emerge. And you'll see that the whole of that dream sequence is filmed through the plastic of her wedding dress, so it's a big symbol. And I think that is just really another way that this film is different from the kind of films that would have been made round about this time. So this is 1945. Clothing was rationed until 1947. So generally when women got married, they would do men, they would make something else out of something that they already had. Their family might pool their clothing coupons to get them something. And this is from the Imperial War Museum. This was an actual wedding outfit. But let's look at Joan's. She's got this long white satin gown, clearly new. It's still in its plastic. And there are certain indications in the film that how has Sir Robert, even with all his money, managed to swing what he's been able to swing for her, including this wedding dress? So again, that kind of counters that collective notion of wartime films, that we're all in this together, and that, you know, we will get through this together. If you contrast a film called Millions Like Us, very much collective effort, to I Know Where I'm Going. It's got two versions of the word I just in the title. And so Joan is this kind of selfish person that's just really focused on herself. One of the other things in that clip is the notion that she has of Scotland as this imaginary place. She's got no notion of it other than tartan-covered hills and old folk songs. And actually, to be honest, the film also portrays Scotland a little bit in that way. And so it's depicted as this magical and imaginary place. And so Joan's level-headed practicality comes up against curses and Norse myth and mermaids and fairy tales. All these kind of things that Scotland is in this film kind of conspire to prevent her dreams coming true. And destiny is a big thing. The film is called I Know Where I'm Going. Joan thinks that she's in charge of her plans. When she arrives on Mull and fog has prevented her going any further, she takes out this itinerary that Sir Robert has given her, and it's all, you get on this train here and somebody will pick you up here, and then you go here and you get in this car. And she takes out this itinerary to see what this means, that she can't get any further, and the wind picks up that itinerary and drops it in the sea. So right from pretty near the start, we're told that Joan's kind of mastery of her destiny is perhaps not in her hands as much as she thinks. I've got one last clip for you now, which is really back to that Scotland as an imaginary place. So Joan is staying with these terrible people called the Robinsons, who Sir Robert has told her are the only people worth knowing on Mull, because he's very snobby as well. And the Robinsons have taken her to visit this woman called Rebecca, to play bridge. And while she's there, Rebecca is telling Joan all about how Scotland used to be before the war. Coincidentally, Torquil, who knows Rebecca, is also there, so they again get to meet. But yeah, Rebecca is spinning this fabulous tale of days gone by. Let's see that clip.
Have you ever seen any Highland dancing?
No, never.
You ought to see our Oban gathering at peacetime. Of course, it's not so big or so famous as Braemar or Inverness, but it has its own quality. You came through Oban?
Yes, the harbour was wonderful, and that lovely green island.
Imagine it, full of yachts, big and small, and there's racing and Highland games all day, and at night, they give a ball. You can't imagine what a wonderful sight it is. The assembly rooms are all hung with special hangings in dark red, and the women wear tiaras, those that have them, and the place blazes with jewels. The men are more splendid than the women, with their velvet doublets and scarlet waistcoats, their lace cuffs and jabots, their buttons of gold and silver, their cairn gauns, their buckle shoes, and their fillybergs of every shade and colour. And the pipes play, and we dance all night, till the sun shines through the curtains. Lovely.
What does filiberg mean?
The kilt. It really means the little kilt is worn nowadays.
Now, what about bridge? Joan doesn't play. Do you play, Mr. McNeil?
No, I'm sorry, no.
So Rebecca's describing Scotland that's gone. You know, Scotland now belongs to people like the Robinsons, to people like Sir Robert Bellinger. I don't know if anybody noticed the little girl sitting next to Mrs. Robinson when she's talked. That's Petula Clark when she was a little girl. So yeah, I'm saying that's a Scotland that's gone, but clearly some part of that Scotland still exists because it's standing there in the person of Torquil in his little shorty kilt, being all kind of manly and handsome. And I mentioned earlier he's the Laird of Culloren, and therefore the locals call him Culloren. So he is this island, he's the embodiment of the land, he's the embodiment of Scotland. And as you can see in that scene, there is a massive kind of chemistry between Wendy Hiller, who plays Joan, and Roger Livesey, who plays Torquil. They've got a really great chemistry together. So most of that Scotland has gone, but some of it's still there. I mentioned that they were cinema pioneers, and they were using techniques that were in their infancy at the time, things like back projection, things like kind of superimposition, where you've got two scenes, one on top of the other. This is Roger Livesey, and this is not Roger Livesey. Roger Livesey was committed to appearing on the London West End stage, so this film was filmed on location in the Hebrides and also filmed in the London studio. He was never able to go to Scotland, so he hired a double, who's the person in the last picture, who copied his gait, who copied his mannerisms, and any time we see the real Roger Livesey, that's a fake Scotland behind him, and any time we see the real Scotland, that's a fake Roger Livesey. So it looks great, they're great cinema pioneers, Joan's cynicism. The real reason I love this, it's a really great love story. It really, come on guys, it's a really great love story. So as I mentioned, the actors got great chemistry together. Right from the start, they've got this kind of easy communication between the two of them. Now we never meet Sir Robert, but we do hear him, because Joan is able to get in touch with him via radio. And so he's got this kind of disembodied, mechanical, snobby voice. That's all we see of Sir Robert, all we hear of Sir Robert. And you can genuinely believe that he is Consolidated Chemical Industries, because he's just not natural, he's not there, unlike Torquil in his shorty kilt, who is all too present. Towards the end of the film, Joan is so desperate to get to Culloren that she persuades a young and callow fisherman to take her despite the danger. Torquil goes along to try and prevent as much havoc as possible. But she's bribed this guy with £20, money he would never see in his lifetime, because she thinks that money is going to buy her her happiness and get her to Culloren. It ends up going badly wrong, and lives are in danger. But before that, there's this little scene. This is a GIF I've got, so it will just keep playing. So she's on this boat, she's convinced she knows everything. He's at home on leave from the Navy. He's lived in this island all his life, he knows these waters, and she will just refuse to admit that anyone knows any better than her. Of course, that's a lesson that she's got to learn. This scene was filmed, I think, in a kind of tank at Denham Studios in London, so again, there's back projection there. And I think Wendy Hiller does pretty well. You can see her flinch slightly, she knows it's coming, but I think she does pretty well in just kind of taking it right in the face. And yeah, this is them at Achille. This is just the last image I'm going to show you. It doesn't happen at the end of the film, but they're at Achille celebrating the wedding, 60th wedding anniversary of some people that Torquil knows, and songs are being sung in Gaelic. She doesn't speak Gaelic, so Torquil has to translate, and this is when he's able to kind of say how he feels in kind of the words of the song. And so Joan's destiny, Joan's aim was to get to Culloren, and in the body of Torquil, the body of who is called Culloren by the locals, she has reached her destiny. I really urge you to see it, it's a great film. Thanks so much.